I always thought that when my father died, I'd cry, that I'd mourn, that grief would swallow me like it did in the movies. But when the nurse called to say he was gone, all I felt was empty. Not because I didn't love him, I did, in my own complicated way, but because I knew what was coming next. My older brother, Logan, had been circling our father's hospital bed like a vulture for weeks. I knew the moment Dad took his last breath, Logan would sink his claws into whatever was left, the house, the money, the business. And I was right. The funeral was cold. Not in weather. It was July. The sun was relentless, but in mood. Logan gave a short eulogy, full of hollow words. He looked polished, important. He wore our father's watch like a trophy. I stood off to the side, in a suit that didn't quite fit anymore, wondering how I had become such a stranger in my own family. After the service, Logan pulled me aside. His voice was calm, almost rehearsed. "Dad left the estate to me," he said. No preamble. No apology. I blinked. All of it. He nodded. He wanted someone responsible to take care of things. Responsible. That word hit harder than I expected. I had taken care of Dad for the last 2 years. When Logan was off in New York building his empire, I was the one feeding Dad, bathing him, staying up all night during the seizures. I had no life, no savings, no relationship. I gave everything. And now I was being given nothing? I stared at Logan, searching his face for a crack of guilt. "He promised me the house," I said quietly. "When Mom died, he said it would be mine." Logan shrugged. He changed his mind. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. He continued, "Look, I know this is a shock, but I'll let you stay in the guest room for a few months until you figure things out." The guest room. In the house I grew up in. The house I kept clean. The house where I held Dad's hand as he died. I wanted to scream, to punch something, but I just stood there, nodding like a fool. 2 weeks later, I came home from a job interview to find my things in boxes on the porch. A note taped to the door. "I'm sorry. I need the space. Hope you understand, Logan." I didn't understand. I stood there, in the heat, with my childhood in cardboard boxes and my pride shattered into a million pieces. That was the moment the anger took root. Not grief. Not sadness. Revenge. I spent the first night in my car. It was humiliating. The kind of thing I never thought would happen to me, but there I was, sweating in the driver's seat of a 2007 Corolla, surrounded by my boxed-up life. I didn't cry. Not yet. I think I was too numb for that. But I couldn't sleep either. I kept hearing Logan's voice, "Hope you understand." Like I was some burden he was graciously setting free. The next morning, I swallowed what was left of my pride and called my friend Mariah. We hadn't talked much since I'd started taking care of Dad. Life had drifted us apart. But she picked up on the second ring. "Are you okay?" she asked before I even said anything. "No," I admitted. "Can I crash with you for a bit?" Her answer was instant. "Yes. Come now." Mariah was the kind of person who made you feel safe just by existing. Her apartment was tiny, cluttered with plants and books, but it felt like a palace compared to my car. I stayed with her for 2 weeks. During that time, I got a part-time job at a bookstore and started slowly rebuilding my life. But every day I woke up, I thought about Logan, about Dad, about the will. I needed answers. I started digging. At first, it was just curiosity. I requested a copy of the will from our family lawyer. When I read it, my stomach turned. Everything, the house, the cars, the retirement accounts, even Mom's jewelry, had been left to Logan. There was a paragraph about me, buried near the bottom. "I trust Logan to make decisions on his siblings' behalf." That was it. No mention of my care. No acknowledgement of my sacrifice. Just blind trust in a man who kicked me out like a stray. I called the lawyer. "Did my father really write this?" I asked. There was a pause. "Well, it was signed in April," she said. "He was still lucid then." April. That was right after Logan came to visit for the first time in months. He'd stayed for a weekend. They'd had some long conversations behind closed doors. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. But now? My gut told me something was off. I started asking around. Quietly, I spoke to Dad's old nurse, Mrs. Carson. She'd taken care of him during the day when I worked late shifts at the diner. "I remember Logan's visit," she said. "Your father wasn't himself after that weekend." I leaned forward. "What do you mean?" He was confused. Kept asking me if he'd already signed something. Said Logan told him not to worry about the details. My stomach turned cold. Was it possible? Had Logan manipulated him? Or worse, forged something? I didn't have proof. Not yet. But I had suspicion, and a reason to dig deeper. And if Logan thought I was just going to disappear quietly, he didn't know me at all. I spent the next few weeks gathering pieces of a puzzle I wasn't even sure existed. It started with subtle things. I went back through Dad's old papers, his email, his calendar. Mariah helped me. She had a degree in journalism and a nose for details. We set up in her kitchen, nights filled with highlighters and coffee. Slowly, patterns began to emerge. Logan had flown in 3 times in the 6 months before Dad died. Not once, like he told people. Each trip had coincided with major changes to Dad's bank accounts. The week after his first visit, $15,000 was withdrawn from one of Dad's savings accounts and transferred to a consulting firm in Manhattan, a company that didn't even have a website. The account was later closed. More alarming, Dad's signature looked different. Not just the will, but on other documents too. His usual confident, looping handwriting was now shaky, uneven, or in some cases, too perfect, like it had been copied. I brought the documents to a handwriting expert, pretending they were part of a family history project. She frowned as she looked them over. "These signatures don't match naturally over time," she said. If I had to guess, some of these were signed by different people. That was all I needed to hear. I didn't go to the police, not yet. I knew Logan would bury me in legal red tape. He had the money, the connections, and the charm to make this all disappear. I needed leverage. Something that would force him to come clean or crack under pressure. So I turned to someone who hated him more than I did. His ex-wife, Danielle. We'd never been close, but I remembered how broken she looked the night she showed up at our house 3 years ago, crying, makeup streaked, whispering something about emotional manipulation and financial abuse. Dad made her leave. Logan told me she was just unstable. I found her through an old coworker. She lived in a small condo outside the city with their daughter, Grace, my niece, whom I hadn't seen since she was a toddler. Danielle opened the door slowly, holding Grace behind her. She stared at me like a ghost had arrived. "I don't want trouble," she said. "I'm not here to cause any," I replied. "But I think Logan forged our dad's will. And I think you know what he's capable of." She let me in. What followed was a 3-hour conversation that shattered any last illusions I had about my brother. She told me about how Logan had drained their joint savings, how he'd lied to investors, manipulated documents, even once tried to get her to sign over her shares in a startup she co-founded. She still had some emails, voice recordings, nothing that tied directly to Dad's will, but enough to build a picture of Logan as a man who didn't believe rules applied to him. Then she said something that stuck with me. He thinks he's invincible, that he can talk his way out of anything. But if you want to get him, really get him, don't go after the money. What then? I asked. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Go after his reputation. Logan's reputation was everything to him. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a brand. Logan Pierce, the self-made visionary. He gave TED-style talks on leadership, mentored startups, had a podcast with thousands of followers where he spoke about integrity and legacy. The irony made me sick. So that became my strategy. I wouldn't drag him into a courtroom where he could weaponize lawyers and loopholes. I'd hit him where it hurt, in the public eye. But first, I needed irrefutable proof. I went back to Danielle. "Do you know anyone who could have helped Logan fake documents or funnel money?" I asked. She nodded. "Yeah, his old college roommate, Matt Delgado. Shady tech guy. They had a falling out over money, but Logan used to brag that Matt owed him a favor for life. If anyone helped him with fake signatures or sneaky transfers, it's probably him." I found Matt through a LinkedIn rabbit hole and messaged him under a fake name, posing as someone looking for quiet digital services. When he agreed to meet, I knew I had him. He was twitchy, paranoid, talked too fast. We met at a coffee shop in Brooklyn, and I pretended to be interested in hiring him to clean up old documents for a family business. He bragged a little too much, name-dropped Logan without knowing who I really was. "I've done some genius-level back-end stuff," he said, smirking. "Changed metadata on PDFs, even cleaned up scans to match handwriting. One guy, won't say who, had me redo an entire will. The real one said he split the house and assets. We simplified things." I leaned forward. And did you get paid for that? His face tensed. Eventually, that was all I needed. I ended the meeting politely, but I recorded the whole thing on my phone. Mariah helped clean up the audio and added captions. It wasn't enough for court. He never said Logan's full name, but it would be damning in public hands. Next, we gathered screenshots, emails from Danielle, even bank records showing the suspicious transfers. A full dossier of Logan's manipulations, carefully organized and backed up 3 different ways. Then, we built the fire. Mariah had a cousin who worked for a mid-tier news site, one that specialized in exposés on public figures. She pitched them a story, The Rise and Rotten Core of Logan Pierce. They were intrigued, especially after hearing the audio clip. And just like that, things were set in motion. The article went live on a Monday morning. By noon, it had over 60,000 views. By dinner time, Logan's name was trending, but not in the way he liked. The fallout was immediate. That afternoon, Logan called me for the first time in months. I let it ring. He called again. I declined. Then came the texts. Logan, what the hell did you do? We need to talk. This is slander, and you know it. I didn't respond. By the end of the day, 3 of his sponsors had pulled out of his podcast. One of his advisory board positions was under review. Investors from his latest startup were demanding transparency. The internet was ablaze with debates. Was Logan Pierce a fraud? A scammer? A manipulative brother who faked a will to steal his dying father's estate? And yet, part of me still felt hollow. Because this wasn't just revenge. This was the dismantling of someone I used to admire. Someone I once loved. When we were kids, Logan was my hero. He was 5 years older, always cooler, always smoother. He taught me how to ride a bike. Covered for me when I broke the window with a baseball. He held my hand at Mom's funeral. And now, here we were, enemies. Strangers. Publicly tearing each other apart. The next morning, he showed up at Mariah's apartment. I don't know how he found me. But when I looked through the peephole and saw him standing there, dressed sharp, but pale and shaken, I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Mariah stepped in front of me. You don't have to talk to him. I want to, I said. I opened the door. Logan looked like he hadn't slept. His voice cracked as he spoke. You're destroying my life. I didn't flinch. You destroyed mine the day you dumped my things on the porch. He looked away. You don't know what Dad said to me. I know what he didn't say. He never told me he changed the will. And I was the one taking care of him while you played savior from a distance. He stepped inside, uninvited. Mariah narrowed her eyes, but let it happen. Logan ran a hand through his hair. You want the house? Fine. Take the damn house. I'll sign it over. But you need to make this go away. The article, the audio, it's ruining me. I crossed my arms. You forged his signature, didn't you? He hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. I did what I had to do, he said softly. He was slipping. I knew if he left things split, you'd blow it all on emotion. You were always reckless. I stared at him, stunned. You think I'm reckless because I stayed and cared for him while you ran off to get applause from strangers? He sighed. I made a mistake. But this, you going nuclear, it's too much. No, I said. It's exactly what you deserve. He looked at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. And then, in a voice I barely recognized, I said, Get out. Logan stood there for a moment, like he thought I might change my mind. Like maybe the weight of the past, of blood, of brotherhood, would crack through my anger and offer him a sliver of mercy. But I didn't blink. I didn't beg. I didn't budge. He turned and left without another word. Mariah closed the door quietly behind him and put a hand on my shoulder. You okay? I nodded, but I didn't answer. The truth was, I wasn't sure. For the first time since Dad's death, I finally had a sense of control. But that control came with a bitter aftertaste. I had aired our family's darkest truth in front of the world. There was no going back now. The next few days were a whirlwind. Logan made a public statement on his podcast, denying the accusations, calling them an attack by someone who didn't understand the complexity of family decisions. But he never once mentioned my name, not directly. It was a smart move. He was trying to reframe the narrative, keep his audience from turning on him completely. But it didn't work. Commenters flooded his page with screenshots, dissecting his statement line by line. People found holes in his story. Old employees of his previous startups began sharing shady experiences. Danielle anonymously submitted a tip to a business podcast that featured her on a special expose episode. Momentum was building. He couldn't keep the mask on forever. Then, something unexpected happened. I got a letter from our family lawyer. Hand-delivered. Inside was a revised copy of the will, signed, notarized, and witnessed, leaving the house and a portion of our father's remaining assets to me. Attached was a note in Logan's handwriting. I won't fight you anymore. I was wrong. I just wanted to win, even if it meant losing you. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it, set it on the table, and walked out to the porch to breathe. Mariah joined me, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. Well, she asked. He gave in, I said, stunned. He's transferring the house. And some money. Wow. She sipped her drink. Guess he finally realized the world doesn't revolve around him. I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere. Because now that I had what I came for, I felt something I didn't expect. Emptiness. I had thought reclaiming what was mine would fix something inside me. But it didn't. Not entirely. Because this wasn't just about property. It was about what we lost the moment Mom died. The cracks that widened after. The coldness that set in. A family that was never whole again. And somewhere deep inside, a part of me still wanted to forgive him. But not yet. In the weeks that followed, I moved into the house. Our house. The same walls that had echoed with laughter when we were kids now stood quiet, heavy with memories. I cleaned every room myself, not because I had to, but because I needed to. It was a way of reclaiming it, inch by inch. As I wiped dust from old picture frames, I paused on one of the 3 of us. Mom, Dad, Logan, and me. At a beach, smiling, sunburned, happy. That version of us felt like it belonged to another life. Logan didn't reach out again. He went silent, vanished from the podcast world, pulled out of his businesses, and reportedly took a sabbatical abroad. Rumors flew. Some said he checked into a wellness retreat. Others whispered about lawsuits pending in the background. I didn't know what was true, and for the first time in my life, I didn't care. I was too busy building something new. Mariah and I started turning the guest room into a creative workspace. She had always dreamed of launching a publishing imprint, a home for writers overlooked by big presses. I had experience organizing and archiving. Together, we got to work. It felt good, real, honest. Still, the house echoed with silence sometimes, especially at night. I'd sit on the porch with tea, staring at the stars, wondering what Mom would think of all this. Would she have been proud of me? Disappointed? Would she have seen through Logan's charm the way I finally had? One night, I got a surprise call. Danielle. She sounded nervous, but clear. I wanted to say thank you, she said. For standing up. For not letting him get away with it. Not just for you, but for me too. I didn't do it for anyone but Dad, I admitted. But I'm glad it helped. There was a pause. Then she said, he's been writing letters to Grace. Long ones. Says he wants to be better. I don't know if I believe him yet. Do you want her to forgive him? Danielle sighed. I want her to be smarter than I was. We stayed on the phone another half hour, talking about healing and how some people don't deserve a second chance, but some do, eventually. It was a conversation I didn't realize I needed. Later that week, while going through Dad's closet, I found a small box tucked beneath some old sweaters. Inside was a letter, addressed to me. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And I'm sorry. I know Logan has always been the one who won, and you, the one who stayed. But you were my anchor. I saw what you gave up to care for me. I was afraid, not of dying, but of what I left behind. I let Logan talk me into changes I wasn't sure about. I trusted him, maybe too much. But if he betrays that trust, I hope you find the strength to fight. And when you do, know that I'm proud of you. You always were the stronger one. You just didn't see it. I folded the letter, tears in my eyes for the first time since he passed. Maybe he had known. Maybe he'd been scared. Maybe, just maybe, he left the strength in my hands on purpose. The letter stayed with me, not just physically, tucked away in my desk drawer, but in my chest, like a slow-burning ember. It softened something sharp in me. Not entirely, but enough. I started visiting Dad's grave every Sunday. At first, I didn't say much. Just stood there. Let the silence speak. But over time, I found myself talking aloud about the house renovations, Mariah's project, my slow steps toward stability. I'm figuring it out, I said once, crouched in the grass beside the headstone. Without him, without needing to win. Just figuring it out. One Sunday, months after the story broke, I noticed fresh flowers beside Dad's grave. Not mine. A simple white bouquet with a note card tucked underneath. I pulled it out and read. For what it's worth, I think he would have been proud of you too. L. No signature, but I didn't need one. I didn't call him, didn't send a message, but something in me relaxed. Weeks passed. The house finally started feeling like mine. Not a war zone, not a battleground. Home. I painted the kitchen walls, changed the curtains, donated the old leather recliner Dad used to sit in. I kept only what mattered. A few photos, a book with his notes in the margins, and a dusty bottle of scotch he never opened. I left it on the mantel like a quiet promise. One evening, I came home to find Mariah sitting on the porch steps, laptop in hand, grinning like a child. You have to read this, she said, spinning the screen toward me. It was an op-ed, a long one, from Logan. When winning means losing, my confession. In it, he admitted everything. The manipulation, the forged trust, the ambition that devoured the very family he claimed to protect. He didn't name me, but the message was clear. He owned it publicly. I spent my life branding myself as a leader, he wrote. But the one person who truly led with integrity was the sibling I tried to erase. I stared at the screen, unmoving. Mariah looked at me. Are you okay? I don't know, I whispered. I think so. Because here's the thing about justice. It doesn't always look like a courtroom or a confession. Sometimes, it looks like living well despite the scars. Sometimes, it looks like letting go. But part of me still wondered. Did he write that because he meant it? Or because he had nothing left to lose? Days passed in a strange limbo. Logan's confession sent ripples through social media, the business world, even our small town. Some people forgave him. Others called for a full investigation. But in the quiet corners of my mind, I wrestled with something far more personal, the question of forgiveness. I wasn't ready to forgive him. Not yet. Not after the years of abandonment, the betrayal, the coldness that had seeped into our family like poison. But I was willing to try. I reached out. The message was simple. I read your op-ed. I want to talk. Not to relive the past, but to see if there's anything left to rebuild. I waited days. Then, one evening, the reply came. I want that too. When you're ready. We agreed to meet in a small cafe halfway between our places. When I saw him sitting there, older, wearier, I felt a flood of memories, good and bad. We talked for hours. No accusations. No shouting. Just raw, painful honesty. He told me about his fear of failure, his desperate need to be seen as the success, and how that twisted his choices. How he envied the bond one had with Dad. How losing that bond broke him more than anything else. I told him about the nights I cried alone, the sacrifices I made, and the emptiness left behind. For the first time, we saw each other, not as siblings at war, but as flawed, hurting people trying to find common ground. It wasn't a happy ending. It was a beginning. When we left the cafe, the sun was setting, casting warm orange light on the cracked sidewalks. We walked out separately, but I felt like we were finally on the same path. Months passed after that conversation. The wounds didn't disappear overnight. Some days were heavy, filled with doubt and old pain. But there was progress. Small moments of grace. Logan started volunteering at a community center, teaching young entrepreneurs the lessons he had learned the hard way. I kept building the publishing imprint with Mariah, helping voices find their stories. We found new ways to support each other, not as perfect siblings, but as real ones. One chilly autumn afternoon, Logan showed up at the house with a small box. Inside was an old family photo album, one I thought was lost. He handed it to me with a tentative smile. Maybe we can fill the next pages together, he said. I nodded. Not because I was ready to erase the past, but because I was ready to try. Because sometimes, the fiercest battles don't end with victory or defeat. They end with forgiveness, not for them, but for ourselves. And maybe, just maybe, that's the greatest legacy a family can leave.